speaking on the potential research topics in material science. Why I am calling it potential research topics? Because whenever we are planning to do a research in material science, we often take a lot of time in selecting our research topic. And when you choose a research area, then it becomes again difficult, further difficult to choose the materials for research. So I will give you some hints in the Indian context, and all these hints I am giving from my own experience. And I hope that this will give you some idea about how to select a research topic for yourself, or for the group of students that you are guiding. So I have been working in the area of polymer composites and thermal spray coatings for about 2 decades, starting from say year 2000 or maybe 1999. And these two topics, polymer composites and thermal spray coatings, are very close to my heart. So let me start with polymer composites. The composites are an area in material science which is drawing attention of the researcher for a long time. And all over the globe, people are working on polymer composites and metal matrix composites and ceramic matrix composites, because they have some attractive properties and they have some applications in which they can replace the monolithic metals and alloys. So they are light, and at the same time the strength to weight ratios are often very high. So polymer composites or metal matrix composites for that matter become very attractive for the scientific community, and also for the industry community. Now, in polymer composites, I have been mostly engaged in research in polymers, and my students have worked on several classes of polymer composites like fiber reinforced composites, particulate reinforced composites, and hybrid composites, and then micro level composites and nano composites. So the area is very vast, and what matters is how you select the material for your research. So in polymer composite, basically in any composite, basically you have a matrix, which is the softer part of the combination, and you also have the reinforcement, which is the harder part, and the reinforcement is embedded into the parent matrix system, and that forms a simple composite. If the matrix material is polymer, we call it a PMC, polymer matrix composite. If the matrix is ceramic, then we call it a ceramic matrix composite, or if it is metallic in nature, then we call it a metal matrix composites. And basically a composite consists of a matrix and a reinforcement, but you can also go for more than one reinforcement, more than one types of reinforcement, and more than one types of orientations of the same reinforcement. So in whatever way you extend your combination from 2 elements to 3 elements, then it will be called a hybrid composite. So hybrid composites are also nowadays attracting a lot of research attention of the scientific community, and that's a very good area if you are planning to do any research in polymer composites. Hybrid composites and nano composites are very good areas. I mean, I am talking of the broad areas. I'll speak a few more things about polymer composites. And don't expect any scientific. I have customized this 15 or 20 minutes talk on the materials, mostly with an intention that I am going to give you some clues about identifying some potential materials, some potential topics, and some potential direction for further research of yours and your students. So in polymer composites, basically we choose first the matrix. In matrix material, if you look at the published literature, most of the literature you will find with epoxy and polyester. The number of papers on thermoplastic polymers are less, because when you make a thermoplastic composite, you require the help of intricate machines, and the fabrication method is little more complicated compared to the thermoset matrices. Now that is the reason why most of the researchers, particularly in this part of the globe, they work on epoxy, polyester, vinyl, phenolic resin, which are the thermoset matrices, thermoset polymers. Now, if you are planning to do any research on polymer composites, I can give you a clue here that think of a matrix which is less researched, So there are polymers like polyether ether ketone, then nylon, then alpha betaine sulfide. So these are few matrices in the thermoplastic category which are less researched. Less researched means they have not drawn much attention of the researchers because of maybe due to their availability, maybe due to their cost, or maybe due to any complications in the fabrication of composites. So those reasons you have to investigate and identify. So while choosing the matrix material, I suggest you that try a matrix other than epoxy, polyester, and polypropylene, because these are the three polymers, both from thermoplastic and thermoset categories, which are included in lot many papers in the journals. Because when you carry out some research, always your objective is to disseminate the findings to the globe through research publications. So research publication has remained a target for all research communities, and if you want to publish your material smoothly, then my first clue point is that you choose a matrix material other than epoxy, polyester, and polypropylene. Then comes fibers. So in fibers, I'll tell you, the fibers can broadly be of two types. Either you go for synthetic fibers, like many go, or you can go for natural fibers. Now, I am an advocate of natural fibers because synthetic fibers are very costly, expensive, and synthetic fibers have standard properties, and there is not much versatility that you can do with synthetic fibers. And moreover, synthetic fibers are synthetically fabricated in industries, so they are not biodegradable in nature. So nowadays, when we're talking of eco-friendliness, environmental awareness, biodegradability becomes a very attractive feature of any product. So if you want to make your composite a biodegradable one, or a composite with at least a biodegradable constituent in it, then natural fiber composites are the natural choice. So my point is that if you are planning to do some research in fiber reinforced polymer composites, then think of going towards natural fibers as the reinforcing element. Synthetic fibers are fine. They have got excellent properties, very good tensile strength, and very good uniformity in the so far as the cross section is concerned, and their surface roughness are uniform, and they are very strong, and they will yield composites that are their strength to weight ratio is very high. Their Young's modulus is also very high, like glass fiber, carbon fiber, Kevlar fiber, so aramid fibers. So these are the synthetic fibers that are in use for very sophisticated applications like defense products, like aircrafts, automobiles, warships, submarines, and whatnot. So there are infinite uses of synthetic fiber reinforced composites for day-to-day life in our present day world, both in industry as well as in societal applications. But the work on natural fibers have been comparatively less compared to the synthetic fiber. Though a lot of work are published in journals about natural fibers, still the mother nature has given us so many plants, so many animal products, so many bird species, so many aquatic species, that if you try to explore the fibers present in these natural elements, then the list will be endless. So my point is that if you are thinking of doing some fiber based composite research, then my advice will be to think of in the direction of natural fiber reinforced composite rather than synthetic fiber reinforced composite, because synthetic fiber reinforced composite like fiber reinforced epoxy, GFRP, and a carbon fiber epoxy composite, or a Kevlar fiber polyester composite, Kevlar fiber polypropylene composite. These are common synthetic fiber based composites which have hundreds and hundreds and thousands of research. So my point is that if you want to do any fruitful research, then you have wide scope in the direction of natural fibers. Where from you get natural fibers? You can get natural fibers from plants, from animal species, also from minerals. So asbestos is a mineral fiber which is a natural fiber, but it is not a biofiber. It's a non-living fiber. But you can get biofibers from plants and animals and birds. And from plants itself, you can get from the seed like the cotton. You can get it from the leaf of the plant, and pineapple. You can get it from the bast. Bast means the trunk. Flax, remi, and hemp. These are examples. Then you can get from the fruit like palm and coconut coir, and you can get it from stack like rice. So there are a lot of sources or lot of varieties in the plant world where from you can extract fibers and use them for making composites. I'm now talking of making composites. Then when you start doing research on composite, again there are wide variety of possibilities. Now coming to another source, that is animal, like animal hair, like the sheep wool. You can try with human hair. Some of my students are, one of my student is working on human hair, and we are getting very excellent results. Then you can try with feathers from bird species, and also the scales of aqueous species like crab, shrimp, or fish. And you can also get silk fiber, tussar fiber. The list is the sources are many, and even from the same plant. Take for example a a palm tree. From the palm tree, from the leaf you can extract fibers. From the stack of a branch you can extract fiber, and also from the fruit, the palm fruit itself, you can extract fibers. So from the same tree, you can, even from the trunk you can think of extracting fibers. So in one particular tree, that is a palm tree or a coconut tree, you are going to get natural fiber that can be extracted from different parts of the tree. So you can see the magnanimity of the creation of God. From you can get fibers which are otherwise biological wastes. Like for example, like a palm fruit, when you take the essence of the fruit and rest of the things is a biological waste, you do nothing. And in villages they use it for for cooking purpose, for like for as a fuel, but otherwise it has no use. It is a biological waste otherwise. So you can try with these things. Now see, there is a galaxy of natural fibers. You can see so many things: coir, cantala, banana, palm. Then this is sisal fiber, and this is a fiber which you will get in abundance in the eastern part of our country. Then this is the feather of a chicken, uh, in which one of my student has done a master's degree. And then this is fish scale. This is also, this fish scale was also taken up by one of my students who did a doctorate on fish scale reinforced epoxy. Similarly, you can take coconut coir, the stick of a coconut tree, the coconut shell dust also you can take as a particulate matter for reinforcement in polymer. So there are a lot of possibility. I am showing you these figures only to give you an idea about the vastness of possibilities that are there in the field of natural fiber. So far, we have been talking about fiber reinforced fiber, but fiber reinforced composites, but we can have the second type of composites also, particulate filled polymer composites, where lot of things, new things can be done. Normally, the particulates are reinforced into polymer to improve the mechanical properties like hardness, impact strength, etc., or to improve the thermal properties like thermal insulation or thermal conduction or glass transition temperature, etc. Improvement in wear related properties, which are called logical properties. Improvement in optical and electrical property. Then particulate reinforced composites are made because it is very easy to process them. The cost is also less, and they are more isotropic in nature. This is very important, because fiber reinforced composites are normally non-isotropic. It is along the direction of the fiber, that is different, and if you take the properties in a direction transverse to the axis of the fibers, then you will find different properties. So anisotropy is very high in fiber reinforced composites, particularly in unidirectional fiber reinforced composite. So when you make a particulate filled composites, then you can observe more isotropy. That means the properties are more or less similar or almost same in all directions, because of the uniformity in distribution of the particle inside a composite, inside a matrix body. Now there are conventional fillers. When you are thinking of particulate filled composites, and if you look for papers, I can assure you that you will find papers, a lot of papers on alumina reinforcement, on zirconia reinforcement, on titania reinforcement, on iron oxide, silica, then combination of these materials. Okay, so these are the conventional fillers, and these fillers available in different. Silicon carbide is one very widely used conventional filler. Then titanium nitride. So there are many things. Aluminum nitride, boron nitride as well. So all these names which I am telling are conventional ceramics which are used as fillers in polymers since a long time. And there are very exciting results that the investigators have found out with these conventional fillers, and many applications have been cited, and these are put to many real-time applications, both in industries, both in like aerospace industries, the automobile industries, power plants, and electronic industries, depending on the properties of the respective composites. Now, these are conventional fillers. So today I am trying to impress upon you the unconventional or non-conventional things. Like for example, synthetic fibers are conventional fibers, but I talked about natural fibers. Similarly, all these metal oxides, metal carbides, and metal nitrides, they are conventional ceramics, but today I'll be talking about non-conventional fillers, which are also capable of exhibiting potential for being used as particulate fillers in polymer composites. Now, what are these non-conventional? Now, every time you think of doing a research in particulate filled composites, what comes to your mind is the conventional fillers. So if you want to do something different and something non-conventional, something less costly, less expensive, and something that has more potential for publication in journals, then I'll advise you to go for waste material. Because in this part of the world, there are a lot of industrial and construction waste which remain unutilized for years, decades, and for millennia. So for centuries. There are lot of industrial waste that we can find here and in and around us, particularly if you are living in industrial cities. And every industrial waste is not actually a waste. It also has some potential material which, if converted by some gainful technique for making value-added product can be a good step, can be a big step in material research. So in Western countries like in Europe and America, Canada, they are working on third generation, fourth generation material. Okay, and they are very costly. But in this part of the world, particularly this part of our country or in Asia, we are relatively poor countries. We always cannot afford to buy such costly conventional fillers just for making a PhD or just for making a program. So let us think of something which is available in and around us. So one such thing is an industrial waste, another such thing is a construction waste. Why not to explore industrial waste and construction waste that we see around us to use as particulate fillers in polymer composites? So with this philosophy in mind, the research students of my group have worked in last 10-15 years on various industrial wastes like red mud, copper slag, cement bypass dust, fly ash, LD sludge, LD slag, blast furnace slag, granite dust, and right now we are working on marble dust. Now these are, some of them are industrial waste, some of them like granite and marble dust are construction waste. Now red mud is a waste that is available in that is generated in the alumina production from bauxite. Copper slag, as the name implies, is the slag generated in copper extraction from its ore. Cement bypass dust is produced in Portland cement production. Fly ash is a very common pollutant and common industrial waste, which is generated in by burning coal in power plants. And we have a lot of fly ash in the eastern part of the country. Though fly ash has been used successfully for making bricks and construction material, still 30% of fly ash remain unutilized and are stockpiled near the power plants. And they not only create health problems, they also sometimes create catastrophic incidents like ash pond collapse and other things which consumes human lives. So fly ash is a deterrent. It is to be used effective in a effective way. So also LD sludge, which is a LD sludge and LD slag, which are industrial waste generated during steel making, adopting LD process. I am basically from a steel city, so I can find lot of blast furnace slag and LD slag which are stockpiled in the form of mountains near the huge steel plant that is there in Rourkela. So a lot of industrial wastes are available. Similarly, we have granite dust and marble dust, which are available in this marble cutting industries, granite cutting industries, or processing industries. So they are also potential material for being used as a filler material in polymer composite. So what I'm trying to impress upon you is that if you are looking for a new kind of work, then let us go for a new kind of material. So instead of sticking to conventional materials, let us stick to non-conventional materials like natural fibers in the fiber category and industrial and construction waste in the particulate category. Then another area where you can try your research hand is thermal spray coatings. And I know today Dr. Sisir Mantri, who he presented and it was thermal spray coatings is to work upon, which there are many type of coatings like high velocity flame spraying. So there are a host of techniques which are coming under the thermal spraying umbrella. And here also the same situation. If you are going for conventional coating materials, they are called spray grade materials like alumina, titania, or zirconia. Dr. Mantri must have told you about YSZ, yttrium stabilized zirconia, or beryllium oxide, or silica. Then they are very expensive. So, and lot of work have already been done on these materials. So, if you want to do a research with some novelty, and if you have the concept of value addition to waste material in mind, then you can also try your hand in utilizing industrial and construction waste for developing thermal spray coatings on metallic and polymeric substrates. So that will be a very good area of research, provided your coating is successful, and if you are able to optimize the parameters in such a way that you are getting a reasonably good coating with some potential application, either as thermal barrier coatings, or as a wear resistant coatings, or as a protective coatings in machine parts, or as a corrosion resistant coating in turbine blades. So many possibilities are again there. So you can now look for the papers in polymer composites and thermal spray coatings, and you will find that materials. So why to go for the areas where 80% people have? So why not to explore the unexplored areas of 20%? So here also the same coating industrial waste and construction waste can be tried as far as its coating potential is concerned. Just check whether this is coatable or not. If it is coatable, then develop good quality coatings. Try to incorporate additives to make it little better, and characterize it. And based on the characterization results, you can propose or recommend its application for various real-time workplaces. So these are the potential coating materials which can be tried. Red mud, in my own doctoral research, I tried some 22 years back. I tried red mud as the coating material, and we successfully deposited red mud through plasma spray technology on aluminum substrate, then copper substrate, stainless steel substrate. And red mud coatings are found to be very promising as far as the hardness and its wear resistance sense are concerned. So you can try with other things. So right now we are trying with marble dust, and hopefully we'll be getting results and soon be publishing it. So there are many possibilities here, and this is not the list of the whole list of the industrial waste. I'm only citing a few examples before you, but there are lot many of them. So with this, I will close this part of my talk with a small story. This is about a shoe seller. Shoe seller. So there was a shoe selling company in India, and there was a shoe selling company in Japan. So one fine morning, an agent of the Indian company and an agent of the Japanese company, both of them decided to explore the market in a remote African country. So both of them, I mean, they separately decided. That was the company's policy in India, and that was the company policy of the Japanese company. But coincidentally, they thought of the concept on the same date, and the agents of both the companies, they traveled to that remote African country on the same day, and they stayed in the same hotel. They were not knowing each other. It is just a coincidence that they stayed in the same hotel, and then they started the market survey. And after one day of very hectic survey, the Indian shoe agent, he reported his boss in Delhi that, sir, there is no chance of selling any shoe here, because in this particular country I found is wearing a shoe. And in the same evening, the Japanese shoe agent, he also telegrammed his boss in Tokyo and suggested that they immediately you send 1 million pair of shoes, because there is huge potential in this country for the sale of shoes. Why? Because in this country no one is wearing a shoe. So see the mindset. The Indian shoe agent was very pessimistic. He told, because nobody is wearing the shoe, so nobody is going to buy the shoes. And the Japanese agent, he identified that because nobody was wearing a shoe, so there is a huge potential of shoe selling in this particular country. Similarly, when we go for literature review, before any research, we do a literature review on a particular area, or on a particular topic, or in a broad area. So there may be two similar cases. Either we get no papers or very less papers on a particular subject, or we may also get huge number of papers in the same in a particular subject. When we get a large number of papers, we become very happy, because I say that I collected 100 papers today in this area, and my friend who is looking for some other area, he got only 2 papers in that area. So I feel very happy that I have got 100 and he has got only 2 papers. But you see, when there is no paper in a particular area, you should be happier than having large number of papers in that particular area. Because when there is less number of papers in a particular area, it indicates that very less research has so far been done in that particular area. So there is a huge potential for you to explore that area and publish new results and do a very interesting research. And already, if you are getting a large number of papers, that means that particular area is getting more and more saturated, and the space for unexplored area will be, the unexplored space in that particular field will be very little, where you can do your, with a suggestion that always, if you want to do an exciting research, always prefer unexplored area, non-conventional materials, and unusual techniques, and and non-conventional combinations. If you are doing a composite coating or a composite material in polymers or metal, then think of a combination which is not usual. So with an unusual combination, with an unusual material, a new non-conventional technique, your list will be more. So with this, I stop this part 1.